It's pretty clear what is responsible for the rise of the support for Trump, and there's general agreement about it. If you take a simple look at economic statistics, the primary support for Trump is coming from mostly white working class, poor people who've been cast by the wayside during the neoliberal period. They've lived through a generation of stagnation or decline. Real male wages are about what they were in the 1960s. There has been, it's also been a decline in functioning democracy. The overwhelming evidence reveals that even their own elected representatives barely reflect their interests and concerns. Contempt for institutions, especially Congress, has just increased, skyrocketed. It's down single digits often. These are people who, meanwhile, there has, of course, been wealth created. It's gone into very few hands, mostly into a fraction of the top 1%. Well, the greatest danger that he and indeed every Republican candidate poses is barely mentioned. It's kind of reminiscent of Sherlock Holmes's dog that did not bark. The greatest danger is there are two huge dangers that the human species faces. We're now in a situation where we have to decide whether the species survives in any decent form. One is the rising danger of nuclear war, which is quite serious. The other is environmental catastrophe. Now, on these issues, Donald Trump and the other Republican candidates are basically uniform.
And do you believe that
the threat of nuclear?
Do you believe that Hillary Clinton, the Democratic frontrunner, would champion those issues in a way that would satisfy you?
Not in any way that would satisfy me, but at least she recognizes that climate change is going on and that we have to do something about it. Every single Republican candidate denies that it's happening, with the sole exception of Kasich, who says, sure, it's happening, but we shouldn't do anything about it. And that's having an impact. The Paris negotiations last December were aiming at a treaty. They couldn't reach it for a simple reason. The Republican Congress would not accept it. So it's a voluntary agreement, which means even the weak standards that were proposed will be barely, maybe it undermines the likelihood that even they will be met. Every Republican candidate, including Trump, wants to eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency, Richard Nixon's legacy, to cut back regulation, to race toward the precipice as quickly as possible. On militarism, every one of them wants to raise the huge military budget. Already over half of discretionary spending, leading right now, it's one factor leading to confrontations, which could be extremely hazardous.
And briefly, I think
this, again, is not being discussed.
Indeed. Well, I'd suggest one thing, perhaps that you might agree with Donald Trump on, would be about the EU. I mean, he talks about the fact that the UK may leave the EU. You've railed against European Union bureaucracy. Could you agree with him on that?
No, I don't. In fact, I actually have no real strong opinion on Brexit, but my concern about it would be that it would weaken the European Union, but it would also probably leave Britain even more, don't want to use too strong a word, subordinate to U.S. power than it is today, which I don't think would be a good thing for the world or Britain.